Hey everybody, Misty Williams from Creative Entrepreneur Radio here. I am so excited about this interview that I just finished with country superstar Bryan White. Bryan is a Nashville friend. He and his wife Erica have been friends of mine for about a year, and we're Okies. We have some friends in common and definitely a lot of values and perspectives in common. Not too long after I met Bryan, I got to hear about his story, and man, this is a long interview, but there's hours and hours and hours that I didn't get into. He is an amazing human being. I feel so inspired by his courage, by his bravery. I mean, his resilience in the face of dealing with so much as it relates to fame and finding yourself as an artist, as a human being. He is an entrepreneur through and through, just like all of us are. You know, he's had to grapple with his demons, and he's had some really big wins, some awesome wins. He's probably best known as a Grammy-winning country star who sang on the hit song From This Moment On as a duet with Shania Twain. And he also talks about the flip side of fame in this interview. He talks about the pressure cooker and what it did to him, what it did to his confidence and to his voice, and the journey back. You know, he's, for the last 15 years, had an unbelievable career without the support of a label. And I think it just goes to show how savvy he is, how great he's been with his relationships, how connected he is to his fans. He's very prolific on social media. You guys can find him in all the channels really easily, and he engages a lot. So I'm super excited to share his story with you. And I think in listening, I know as I was reliving, you know, some of the moments that we talk about that have shaped his career, I felt so opened because his story is my story and his humanity is my humanity and it's your humanity. And we're all on this journey doing our best and having to dig deep and find the courage to persevere, to keep putting one foot in front of the other. And I love it. This story is a gift to me, and I trust it'll be a gift to you. I'm excited for you to hear it. Thanks for joining us today.
Welcome to Creative Entrepreneur Radio. We're going backstage to explore the lives, lifestyles, and growth strategies mastered by seasoned entrepreneurs around the world. Entrepreneurs are gladiators. Are you one of us? If you're a first-time listener, welcome. Feel free to add the podcast to your favorite RSS feed or iTunes and check out our show notes at creativeentrepreneurradio.com. Up now, host and founder of MarketechU.com, Misty Williams.
Hey everybody, welcome to Creative Entrepreneur Radio. I am so excited to have my friend Bryan White join us today. For the show. We are going to have an unbelievable conversation, and I'm very excited that you get to listen in. So Bryan actually graduated across town a year before I graduated high school in Oklahoma City. So we are fellow Okies, and we've connected on a lot of things in life, in our storylines, our shared love of God and family, and appreciation for things like Boomer Sooner, sorry Longhorn fans, and cruising 12th Street. But when I went off to college in Springfield, Missouri, Bryan beat me to Nashville with $500 in his pocket, his drumsticks, his guitar, and a dream, like so many others that moved to Music City. He was wanting to make it big in country music, and make it big he did. He charted 17 singles on Billboard's country charts, had 6 #1 singles, 2 platinum records, 2 gold records. He joined forces with Shania Twain, and together they took From This Moment On all the way up to #4 on Billboard's Hot 100 chart. He has garnered several awards for himself, including a Grammy, a CMA Horizon Award, and an ACM Top Male Vocalist Award among them. And as a hit songwriter, his songs have been recorded by Diamond Rio, Sawyer Brown, Winona, Joe Diffie, Leanne Rimes, and others. He's been named one of People's 50 Most Beautiful People. He's a music producer, and he oozes talent as a vocalist, drummer, guitarist, engineer, and all-around virtuoso. He lives in my Nashville with his hot wife, Erica, and 2 beautiful boys, and he loves hunting turkeys. Welcome to the show, Bryan.
What an intro. I love it.
I had to end with the turkeys.
I love it. I love it. That's
a little
awesome.
yin, a little yang.
Well, I'm really excited to talk to you. We were talking before I started the recording today about how I could probably have you here for 3 hours just, talking about all the different layers to your story. But I think what's so fun about your storyline is obviously moving to Nashville so young and having success early on. When I heard you telling the stories of kind of how things clicked and came together, I just felt mesmerized, like there was just something so graced about your journey and the way things started clicking. So I'd love for you to share with the listeners a little bit about those first few years in Nashville and how this whole career thing came together for you.
Well, a lot of times I feel really rushed in telling this story, so pardon me if I try to condense it into a Reader's Digest thing. I'll try to stretch it and give you a little bit more detail than I usually do.
That'd be awesome.
But I had parents that were musicians. All of my family are all from southwestern Oklahoma, like near the Altus area. That's kind of sacred ground for me. Although I didn't grow up out that way, I was, all of my peoples are from out there,
Right.
And so it's really sacred ground. But my parents moved to Oklahoma City in their early 20s to go, take a stab at the music business in Oklahoma City. Just the scene. Just trying to make a living there, and they did very well. My parents were divorced in '79, but continued to kind of do their own thing. My mom ended up sort of leaning toward more of the top 40 pop type of bands. Most of the stuff, the bands that she was in, they did a very limited amount of country. They did a little bit, but most of the places my mom was playing, it was like, country clubs and back in the 80s, late 70s and 80s, the music scene in Oklahoma City was just absolutely bonkers. It was just on fire. And so, clubs were a really, really big deal back then. And my mom, covered all, whatever was going on at the time in the top 40. She played all that stuff. And they, a lot of her bands were like, real synth heavy and, keys heavy and that kind of deal. And my dad, was really, really influenced by Merle Haggard and people like John Conley, and my dad really loved the Allman Brothers and Leonard Skinner and Edgar Winter, and my dad was just somewhere in between. He was like a hodgepodge of all that stuff. He played electric guitar and he played really well, and had a tenor and kind of a tenor to baritone type of voice somewhere in there, and he loved that crossroads, but where that Southern rock thing met traditional country. And so you can imagine what kind of household I grew up in, what kind of an upbringing I had. I got to hear this, I grew up in a melting pot of music, which I love. I love that to this day because I think it's made me who I am, and it's made me a lover of all kind of music, all kind of musical expression, So my dad taught me how to play drums when I was 5 in Lawton, Oklahoma, and I never really took many more lessons after my dad kind of showed me 2 or 3 of your just basic, drum beats, drums 101, and I just kind of, I remember my dad playing me the Ventures record, Wipeout, and I learned Wipeout, and then just things kind of just started going from there, and I would just pick up on things along the way, and just kind of a self-taught drummer. I mean, I have memories of setting up my drum kit in the living room, and because back then having your own stereo was not an option, so the big stereo was always in the living room, so I'd set up in there. And I remember playing Roll On 18-wheeler by Alabama and playing drums with that, and playing drums with Rockwell. I always feel like somebody's watching me, and so I was just listening to all kinds of music, and learning Yeah, I remember I went through a big Led Zeppelin phase because I really loved. Probably my first major big drum influence was John Bonham, from Led Zeppelin, and so I grew up playing drums, and somewhere along the way I kind of messed around with the guitar and enough to go, oh, this is really cool, and the first song I learned on guitar was "Swingin'" by John Anderson, and didn't really get real serious about singing and playing until I reached, I'd say probably 14 or 15 years of age.
How old were you when you picked up the guitar?
For real, probably 15, something like that. I was kind of a late bloomer, I wish I had picked that up earlier, but I remember distinctly, remember when the movie Stand By Me came out with River Phoenix? And
right.
Well, I was hearing Stand By Me, the original record as a hand-me-down, it was becoming a hit for the second time. But to me, it was the first time. I didn't know. I heard Mickey Gilley sing it in the Urban Cowboy movie, and I thought it was cool. But when I heard the original record in that movie, Stand By Me, I was like, oh my God. And that's the first song I remember learning, singing. And my brother and I put this little band together. We found a bass player. He was about our age. He was in our church, and we just kind of did this little trio thing. My brother played electric guitar, and I played drums, and we were just going to be like an instrumental kind of a thing, because none of us were brave enough to sing. And we had kind of coaxed my mom into letting us go to this club that all of her band's gear was set up at, because they had the house gig there. And she had commandeered their front of house engineer to come over and let us record a couple songs. One of them was Stand By Me, and we started playing the song. I've got the whole video of this occurrence, and my mom, how moms just know. She knew I was singing already at that point. I don't know how. I guess, like now when I hear my kids singing, I stand outside the door and I don't let them know that I'm there, so I assume my mom did the same thing. So she came up on stage when we were playing, Stand By Me, and there just happened to be a mic close by, and so she went and grabbed it and literally just stuck it right in front of me and said, "It's time to sing, boy," and she said, you have a great voice. You need to hear it on the PA so you can know what I'm talking about. And so from that day forward, I put my mouth right into the mic and sang Stand By Me. And so that song, has always had a really dear place in my heart. I still do that song quite a bit, but long story short, I heard a guy named Steve Warner not long after that, and his music and his voice and his timbre and his style captivated me so much that was really the defining moment in my life where I went, okay. It's out of all the things in my life, that's the most pristine, it's the most pristine, crystal clear moment that I can go, okay, that happened right then. When I heard his stuff, it was so powerful. I knew right then exactly what I wanted to do, and I don't think I've ever been as clear about anything else in my life.
How old were you then?
15 maybe.
Wow.
So it's kind of weird because, 3 years later, I would be in Nashville,
Mm-hmm.
So, that's not a lot of time to develop and figure out musically who you are. But I knew enough, and I knew I had enough ability to do it.
I think that's one of the things that makes, for me, the soul of a musician so special. I'm blessed that I spent the last 15 years in a community of people who have so much creative depth, but every single one of them have a story where at 8, 12, 15, it's like they knew this was their their calling in life. There's just something about, if that's in you, if that's your creative soul, like it makes an early appearance,
Yeah, exactly. And, with regards to the guitar, that's about the time that I just, started, I literally left that moment and went, okay, I got to start writing. I got to write some songs. I need to work on that. And so that's what made me get more serious about the guitar, because, just having a bed of music under me is what I needed. I couldn't just be a drummer and be a songwriter. Well, you can, but for melodic purposes
right.
and music, I needed to learn how to play guitar. So I started learning, and I took a few lessons from a guy named Joe Settlemyers in Oklahoma City. Joe is a world-renowned jazz guitar player, and it has a lot of credit to a lot of people, a lot of famous guitar players give that guy credit for where they are today. And I was 17. This is a couple years later. I was 17. I'd kind of written a few songs. They're not, I wouldn't call them songs at all, but it was a start. And my mom was working part-time as a receptionist at this studio in Oklahoma City called Amethyst Records, but I can't remember the name of the studio. I think maybe it was called Studio 7. I'm not sure. She had gotten me a job coming in and singing, the karaoke tapes, or one side of the tape is an instrumental and the other side is a vocal, a demonstration vocal. And that was kind of became one of my first musical jobs. And so I'd come in and I'd sing Anymore by Travis Tritt, and I'd do Shameless by Garth Brooks, and I'd sing all these different, I'd try to sing them just like as close to the master vocal as I could, and I'd get paid $40, $50 or whatever, and I thought, man, this is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had a couple of songs, and I wanted to demo them, and my mom convinced them to let me come in and cut these songs, and then we would barter or do a trade-off where the next few things that I did for them would just be a complete trade-off. They wouldn't have to pay me anything. So I cut 2 demos, and back to Joe Settlemyers. Joe called my dad one day and said, hey, I have this friend of mine who's a great session guitar player named Billy Joe Walker Jr., and he is looking for acts. He's really wanting to break into the production side of things. And, does Bryan have anything that he could send him? So those were the 2 demos that I sent to Joe to send to Billy. And they're one-take vocals. Then I didn't think about anything. I thought you sang at one time. You had one shot. And it was all on analog tape. And they weren't really mixed. It was just they were just pretty much whatever happened when they went down is exactly what was on the tape. And really, honestly, if I played it for you today, you'd go, wow, this sounds pretty good, because the session players in Oklahoma City are really dialed in. They're really great players.
Yeah.
And I'm dear friends with all of them still. But that tape made it to Billy. Billy told me the story. It actually gives me cold chills thinking about it right now. He said he had listened through boxes and boxes and boxes of tapes, and he said he was kind of frustrated because you just have to wade through so many things to get to somewhere sometimes. And he said, I literally was at the bottom of this box, and you were at the bottom of this box. It was the last tape, and he said I put it in, and he said he that was the day that he called me. He called me the same day, and he sounded like a college professor or something. He didn't sound like a world-renowned, acoustic guitar player that played on everything from George Strait to, Frank Sinatra to the Beach Boys, And I had a heads up that he was going to call me because Joe, I heard it through the grapevine, so to speak, and he called me and talked to me, and I didn't know who he was. I was just like, hey, this guy's in Nashville, and I was already, my brain and my thoughts had already kind of gone to Nashville. I was thinking about all that stuff, you know, and I was performing around town where I could and just trying to, I was really on fire, I was really trying to, find my way and figure myself out musically. And I got off the phone with, Billy said, "Hey, I'd love to meet you if you can. I'd love for you to come up and, I'll show you around. I'd love to just hear you sing live and, whatever." We just kind of hobnobbed. And I got off the phone and I started looking through all of my CDs, and Billy was in the credits of every CD that I owned. His name was on all of them. And all of my Steve Wariner records, he was playing electric guitar and acoustic guitar.
Did it freak you out in a good way?
Yeah, it made me realize, okay, well, that guy was like legit. The guy that just called me was not some imposter. This is a real person. So I went up. It was my senior year. I went up to Nashville to go meet with Billy, and it was one of my best friends and I went together. My grandpa, thank God, he let us take his car, and we took his credit card, which is back then. If I could have, that was a bad idea, but he did, and we went up there and I visited with Billy and met with him, and there was a couple of people up there that I knew from Oklahoma that I ended up singing a few demos for some people up there and actually making a couple of bucks. And I met with Billy, and Billy just said, "Man, you just sound like you're really poised for this." And he told me I sounded like Steve Wariner, and he told me I sounded like Paul Carrick, and he told me I sounded like Lee Greenwood in a lot of ways, and and just said, he was just kind of asking me questions like, "Are you serious? Are you wanting to do this?" And so fast forward, I graduate from high school. I mean, that trip was just another. It was another, defining moment. It was like the confirmation. I was like, okay, this has got to happen. So I didn't know how it was going to happen. I didn't have any money. I didn't really have much going on. And so I went back. I graduated from high school by the skin of my teeth, and my grandparents and my mom and my dad, everybody just kind of threw together what they could and gave me some money, and I put a deposit down for a apartment and moved to Nashville. And my mom, helped me move up there, and my brother, and I just one thing. I don't want to drag it out forever because it's I don't want to make it like this is your life or something. But it goes on forever. But long story short, I got to Nashville. Struggled the first year financially. My family continually wired me money to make rent. And I started. It's all about who you know. So I met a lot of people that were, some were from Oklahoma. A lot of people that were from Oklahoma are what connected me to, the different, outlets that, led to my success. And there's this one guy that I met in Oklahoma who came out to hear me one night. His name was Audie Teeter, and he was the song plugger at Glenn Campbell Music. And he came to the Oklahoma Opry to hear me, and, I stayed in touch with him, and he was one of those guys that took me to Glenn's publishing company, and I actually got a publishing deal. Glenn Campbell signed me to my very first publishing deal. And so I started writing for his company and learning how to write. Marty Gamlin, who was the publisher there, who ran the company, was really instrumental in, coaching me, about songs and what a great song was, and plugging me in with great writers that I could learn the craft, how to actually write a song.
And I think
and then once I did that,
probably not really appreciated.
What's that now?
That's probably something that's not appreciated so much outside of Nashville, is what a craft songwriting really is.
for sure.
Man, talk about just unbelievable communicators and wordsmiths, and creatively what those songwriters do. It's
yeah.
wow.
And so, I started developing a rapport as a singer amongst songwriters, and so I started getting phone calls to sing demos for people, and that kind of became my mainstay for the first year and a half to 2 years of being in Nashville. Back then it was $40 a pop. The publisher or writer would call me, and I would come and pick up the tape, and it was rubber banded to a lyric, and my job was to learn the tune and key it, and then call them with the key so they could track it in the correct key if I couldn't make it to the tracking session. And then I'd sing the demos, and they'd pay me $40. And I got to where I was doing, 5 to 10 demos a week, and, it was really fun. And that's kind of where I cut my teeth, just developing as a singer and knowing, getting used to hearing myself that clear in my head and everything. And in the interim, Billy and I, the whole time, were developing. He was really working hard to develop me. He never asked me for a dime. This will tell you who this guy is. This guy believed in me so much, and I was so undeveloped. So what an eye and an ear to see whatever he saw, because he would convince all of his friends on all these sessions that he played all the time. He would convince Paul Lyme and Larry Byram and Matt Rawlings and all these people to stick around an extra hour to cut a couple tracks on this kid. And so we compiled, the best of the best, 4 or 5 things that we liked. That some of them were things I wrote, some of them were things that other people wrote. And once we kind of got, enough, stuff together that made sense, Billy started actually pitching it, and that says a lot for him, because, he could have been like, hey, I'm going to need X amount.
Right.
Call your family, and I don't know. I still don't know to this day if he paid all those players or if they were just favors. I don't know, but it says a lot for them too,
Yeah.
And I'll never forget it. I'll never forget it,
Mm-hmm.
And so eventually, there were a few people that passed. MCA was one of them, and then I got a couple of offers, and one of them was Asylum Records, which was now is part of the Curb family, but back then it was Warner Brothers. It was under the umbrella of Warner Brothers. Warner Elektra, Asylum, and I got signed, and that's kind of how things started going.
So how long had you been in Nashville by that time?
I moved to Nashville in '92, and I was cutting my first record. I forget what time of year it was, but in '94,
Mm-hmm.
a little over 2 years later.
Right.
So it was not like this, sob story of, I don't have I'm sorry to say that I don't have this, I was sleeping in a car type of story. But, it's not to say that it wasn't still a struggle.
You can't, everyone hustles.
Making rent was next to impossible sometimes. And,
right.
My poor roommates had to cover for me a few times, and God, I'm so thankful I never have to do that again. I hated the way that felt, but
mm-hmm.
but it makes me so appreciate my family, so
I think it kind of shines a light on just how important these networks are that we become part of.
Oh my gosh.
The Oklahoma
You and I talk about that more than
mm-hmm.
anything. When we talk, that's what we end up talking about
mm-hmm.
a lot,
Yeah, and I look over the trajectory of my own career, and I can see where people that I met 10 or 15 years ago, the meeting at the time is just coincidental, but, they play a part in our careers later on. You did something really fun when you were touring in the beginning, doing all the radio tours with White Roses.
Yeah, I hated I hated it. Well, because
but it was kind of brilliant.
Yeah, I get it now. I mean, because I'm, an old guy, and I get all that totally. But then I was a kid that was really in his shell. I didn't know how to be social. I didn't know how to shoot the bull with people and just talk about nothing. Now I'm great at talking about nothing. But then, being thrust out there like a box of, Lucky Charms, and I've got to sell it, and be in a conference room and sing to people that I don't know and all that. And it was really difficult and really uncomfortable for me. And when I found out the label was going to, I was going to have to personally go to every cubicle in the radio station, or to every woman in the radio station and hand them a white rose. I was so mortified and so embarrassed. But I get it now, and I swear, I get everywhere I go with regards to radio stations. Not every station, but a lot of the stations I go to, and a lot of the CRS and different things with the industry. I swear somebody comes up quite often and says, "You handed me a white rose when you were 19 years old in Dallas, Texas at K-Plex or whatever, and I'm just like, I'm still stunned. It's still, so I get it now.
I hated that. I hated it. Glad you remember.
Yes. Hated every minute of it on the radio tour.
Yeah. There's probably a lot of things you can look back. You love it, you hate it, but it's all just part of the business,
Yeah.
Stretching you in a million different ways. So one of the things that I really love about just listening to you, like not even our conversations, but just listening to you talk to different people or talk about what you're doing, is all these different angles that you are a music maker. Songwriting, drumming, producing, singing, traveling, going in the studio, doing acoustic sets. When you were, 15 and thinking about a career in music, was all of that a part of it for you? Like, were you envisioning yourself, doing all these different kinds of things, wearing all the different hats?
No. I was more one-dimensional then. Mm-hmm. I think as I started developing, especially during the cutting of the first record, it was such an amazing college type of experience for me, a real hands-on experience, Mm-hmm. I think the reason I grew so much is because I was not afraid to ask questions, so I was constantly asking my producers, different things, and the players and stuff, I just always wanted to know how it all worked. And, by the second record, I'm, really, it's all coming into focus for me. And I'd say probably by the second record, I started thinking about things like that, of that nature, really branching out. And second record, first record I did, I was involved, but, I sang backgrounds on a few things. But, by the second record, I was like, man, wouldn't it be cool if I could do this or that, or I loved, doing background vocals and playing parts here and there, and just being involved was really, I felt like I didn't want to cheat people when I released a record. I wanted to say, hey, I was really a part of this record. I was not just the guy that came in and sang. I mean, by the second record, I started thinking that way,
So you're on the fast track. You're several years into your career. You've got singles topping the charts. You're touring the world with LeAnn Rimes. You married the gorgeous Erica Page, and everything is going great on the outside. But behind the scenes, there's a lot of stuff that's not necessarily music related that you're having to wrestle with and deal with. And I think for my audience especially, and I mean, this is part of the human experience, we do the things professionally that are part of our mission, calling, passion, goal that we're trying to reach, but we take ourselves with us, and we take our experiences and our demons and our insecurities, we take it all with us. And for you, being in the pressure cooker that you were in and having the pressures of fame, there was a lot of stuff that started coming up that maybe you hadn't dealt with over the last 5 years when things were moving and shaking so much, but they couldn't be ignored.
Right.
So I'd love for you to kind of tell us about that time. What was it like being on the road and traveling? And, I mean, Leanne Rimes was huge at the time.
Yeah, man, it just depends on what period you're talking about. I see it all as it was like high school on wheels. I mean, that's where my college, college, you know, it's like college on wheels. You know, I don't mean that in the respect of drugs and alcohol. I just mean it was just a chaotic, it was like really like, it really was like college on wheels. It was like, you know, pizza after the show and,
right.
You know, just loving the fact that girls were screaming for us, and you know, it was all that kind of stuff. And I felt like we were, you know, I speak for the band, and I think back then I had probably one of the best road bands ever, and it was an awesome experience. We were really serious about the show, and so we rehearsed. We probably over-rehearsed. I mean, it was like this really well-oiled machine, and we were super competitive, and, you know, just, you know, we wanted to be the best, and, you know, we're gone 250, you know, plus. I mean, we were just gone. None of us were married. We were just, it was all about music, and, yeah, it was all about music, and the game, you know. The game meaning, you know, trying to outdo whatever you just did, you know, and so the road was fun and you know, crazy and busy. I hated not having time to myself, though. My mom tells me to this day that she felt like they stole my son from me for a period of years. And it makes me sad to think about that, because I was really just a puppet in a lot of ways. I was not a strong character, so I never really stood up for myself. And if I did, it was more passive aggressive. It was like, you know, if I was pushed in a corner about something, or, you know, like a badger, somebody was poking you with a stick, I would lash out, you know, because I just, that's how I was then. And so I really felt like whatever anybody said, I just kind of did, you know. I really was not I think that's why I worked so hard, because I was not, I just didn't know how to put my foot down and say, no, I want to go home. I want to go fish, or I want to go, I remember a few times just randomly jumping on a plane to go back to Oklahoma and like getting the third degree about it, you know. And it always made me so mad, because, you know, it's like I felt like I was sort of under the thumb of the government, so to speak, in a lot of ways. You know, I didn't realize then that, yeah, all these people were working for me. I didn't realize that, you know. And I really looked. I felt like it was the other way around, and I think it's just because I was just naive and you know, I the part of it I love, though. The place where I felt the most safe is when I was on stage, and that's a lot of times why I didn't want to get off stage, because I knew when I came off stage, it was just like under the thumb of the government again, if that makes any sense. That's the best analogy I can think of right now. Is that an idiom or an analogy? I get those mixed up. My son will always correct me. He'll say, Dad, that's not an analogy, that's an idiom. And I'll go, oh, okay, sorry.
Sorry. Right.
So I'm still learning, but all that, just that cycle. I love the way you put it. Pressure cooker is a really great way it's a great mental picture. So trying to outdo the last thing you did, and, you know, dealing with scrutiny all the time, and all that was really difficult. You know, I mean, it definitely took its toll on me. So
how do you feel like you coped with it at the time? Was it just kind of stuffing and avoiding, or?
Well, again, I was kind of a, you know, I was kind of like a puppet, you know. If the manager said we got to go do this, I would go do it, you know, and I'd grumble under my breath the whole time, you know. And I don't know. I always felt like there were so many songs that I thought were so much more me, but you know, either the label or the manager just thought, you know, it's just not country enough, or it's not this or that, you know. It's, if you do that, it'll be the end of the, you know, it'll be the last nail in the coffin or something, you know. But you know, I just didn't want to stay in one spot, you know, and I wanted to keep expanding and, you know, and becoming better at what I did, you know. So, you know, I mean, maybe some of that was to my detriment. I don't know, but I don't think I would do it any differently, because I just don't want to.
Yeah.
You know, I don't want to get stale and get bored with what I'm doing, you know.
So you eventually made the decision to come off the road, probably at a time when other people think that you should have been, you know, working it harder than ever. Yeah,
and when they say, well, you could have really pushed it over the top, and they're right. I think that definitely. But I was cutting this fourth record. God, I've told this story so many times, my blood pressure goes up when I tell it. So if my tone or my breathing changes, you'll know why. But no, I can laugh about it now. But I cut this record. It was my fourth record for Asylum, Warner's, whatever. Are you still there?
I am.
Okay. And there were two new label heads that came in, Susan Nadler and I can't remember the other lady's name. I'm sorry. I'll think of it in a minute. All the team that I had developed a relationship with and got in the dirt and fought from the ground up were fired. The offices in New York at Elektra fired everybody. I don't know why. There was just, I don't know if there was a falling out or whatever, but they all got let go. And there was this new kind of crop of people that were brought in, and, you know, there just wasn't the vested, you know, there wasn't the camaraderie, you know, you know, when you fought with somebody and you've spilled blood with somebody, it's, you know, you feel connected to them. That connection was not there. So, but they were real supportive. You know, I knew they were supportive of what I did and what I wanted to do, and we butted heads a lot. But they decided to let my friend Derek George and I co-produce 6 sides on this record, and they wanted me to explore using somebody else on another 6. And I was like, okay, cool. So my friend Shelby Kennedy set up a meeting with Dan Huff and he and I at the Cracker Barrel on Harding in Nashville to talk about, you know, doing something. And so that worked out, and Dan did 6 sides. Dan was starting to really get on fire, so I don't think he had as much time to focus. I mean, he had to churn these 6 sides out in no time, you know. So right. I'll never really know what it would be like to work with Dan when he's more relaxed and has more time. However, I realized that how super unbelievably otherworldly talented that guy is in every facet. And so that was a great learning experience for me. And we did our 6 sides, you know, and the record tanked. You know, the first single was You're Still Beautiful to Me. It was a song that Mutt Lange and Bryan Adams wrote, and I loved it. Thought it was a romantic song and sexy and all that stuff. And so, you know, I sang the song. I really tried to, you know, sing it like Bryan would sing it, and it kind of bit me in the butt. Radio wasn't crazy about it, and they said, you know, he's singing too high, or it's too breathy. It's not the Bryan that we know, and, you know, fill in the blank, all that stuff. So that was one of those first moments in my career where, I mean, it literally took my breath away. and probably because of, just that whole entitlement thing, up to that point, you think you're, God's gift, because everybody for 6 years has been telling you that, and you're a kid and you're just naive and you're like, yeah, well, I mean, you're cocky and full of yourself and all that kind of junk, and don't let anybody tell you that's ever been in a celebrity type of position that they have not been affected to some degree by all that success. You suffer from entitlement. I don't care who you are. I don't care how great of a super Christian you are. And I can say that now because there's so many things that are so easy to see now. But anyway, long story short, it really hit me hard. And so the label said, can we go cut this song? I mean, everybody likes the song. Can we go cut it, in a lower key? So I went back, cut it a half step down, and changed some of the melody. Well, I wasn't singing so high. A lot of them said, well, it sounds like he's screaming or whatever. And so I tried to, dance, and just and tried to accommodate everybody. And yet they still ended up not playing it, and it didn't really make it into any good rotation at radio. And up to that point, I'd had a good rapport with radio,
right?
With the exception of a few select people that I won't mention. And then that single kind of died, and then we released another one called "God Gave Me You." That I love the song. It was really, I think it was a really great record. Dan did such a great job on it. I think I sang it well. But at that point, I don't know what happened, I didn't have the same promotion team, and this single just, it just kind of died in the water, and ironically enough, it has since become a humongous hit in the Philippines, of all places on the planet. It's so amazing. If you go view all these lyric videos that people have made from the Philippines and parts of Asia with this song, I mean, it's up like over 12 million views,
right,
on a lot of their videos, and it's called "God Gave Me You." But anyway, it didn't do well, and in the industry, I started reading, some of the critiques and some people around me, when I started dealing with, second guessing my voice and, kind of starting to fear singing, and well, maybe I'm not that good. And there were some people that were really close to me that said some really, really cutting things to me about my voice during that time where the cut was wide open, and it just devastated me. It just crushed me, and I've never quite recovered from it. So I lost all of my confidence in myself as a vocalist. Not overnight, but gradually. I could feel the noose tightening as I was out on the road, or as I was in the studio. All of a sudden, I felt like I had less and less ability to and control. And, you got 20 plus people that you're paying out on the road. You got 2 buses, you got guitar techs and tour manager, and you're gone. You're gone. You're everywhere. And all of a sudden you're dealing with, this issue, this confidence / vocal issue. And you got people staring at you, thousands of people out there that paid a ticket, and you're all of a sudden, I start going into internal delirium. Does that make sense?
Right. Yeah.
Internal delirium, but I can't let anybody know. It's like this.
Got to keep up appearance.
God, what if people find? So I had to do a whole, year, almost a whole year of touring like that. So it was just the most devastating, scary, darkest depression that I've ever been in, you know. Mm-hmm. All the things you can think about in depression, I thought about all of them.
Right.
And we finished at the end of 98 at the Desert Inn in Vegas. And the next year I did a small tour, and then I think we were in Rockford, Illinois. I can't remember, but I walked up on the bus and I called a meeting, and I just told everybody I got to stop. So I told them, I said, thank y'all for all the hard work, but I need to take some time to figure out what's going on, and because I don't know what's going on. And so my wife was really busy at the time working on a soap up there called One Life to Live. And during this time, I got married like a year later. I took a year off, and then the next year we got married, and she was still on the soap. I'm going through what I'm going through, but I'm extremely happy because I met my wife and we got married, and in a lot of ways, I don't know where I would be had she not been there, Mm-hmm. And so we found this church in New York City and started going there, and we were. It was an amazing church. These people just completely embraced us and took us in, and I think it's safe to say that Erica and I were. Well, Erica's not a white girl, but I'm a white boy. We were just a few, one of maybe a few white folks that went there, and I only say that to commend these amazing people that were at this church. It was called Central Baptist Church, and they just embraced us and took us in. And I just had a real come to Jesus moment in that church, and I just never had ever felt that loved. It was real unconditional. They didn't know who I was. They didn't know anything about my world, and right. They just saw somebody that was broken and hurting. And I started reading the Bible for the first time in my life, and started really just, at first I was like, okay, God, I'll make you a deal. And then it turned into, no, I'm not that worried about my voice. I think, I'm just going to try to get myself together. And the more I started pouring into this, trying to really have a authentic, no holds barred relationship with God, I was just trying to fix myself and fix my heart and my soul. And I started realizing that, how jacked up I am, all of us, and it was kind of, I always felt like, it was like God was kind of like saying, listen, we'll deal with your voice thing, but let's fix you, let's fix your heart, your soul. Let's turn you in the right direction, wind you up and let you go, mm-hmm. it that way, and that's really what happened, that changed my life. Just looking up changed my life. I feel like I'm kind of a Proverbs 22:6 kid, I was raised in church, and that's, ultimately what I turned back to, I can't say that I was a real strong Christian during the years where my celebrity status was, up there. I was pretty much worshiping myself, if that makes any sense. So, long story short, that's kind of what I went through, and I still deal with it on a daily basis. The confidence thing. I would be lying to you if I said that I didn't. It's an ongoing struggle, but
yeah.
I just I believe that one day it's just going to be really stinking good, and I still have. I'm always holding out hope, I sing pretty good. I know I'm not where I want to be, Mm-hmm. I just I'm just try to press forward and try to be a great example for my kids and do my best. My phone's still ringing, so I'm so grateful for that. I try to every time I sing, I try to sing like it's the last day that I'm going to sing, you know?
Mm-hmm. So one of the things that really endeared me to your story was the authenticity and just the realness about, you know, how you think about what's happened for you over the last, you know, 20 years of your career, and how you talk about what you're dealing with. I know that for me, you know, last year was a time that I went through a lot of transition in my life, as you know, moving to Austin, and I shook up a lot of things in my business. And I did an interview yesterday for someone else's podcast, and I said something, you know, bravado about how I knew that I was really good at what I did. And he asked me, he's like, is there ever a time that you don't feel confident? And I said, every day. You know,
Yeah.
There's this yin and yang of knowing this is my path and my calling and what I'm supposed to be doing, and feeling like I really contribute and add value, and also knowing that I am pushing up against my own limitations every single day.
Amen. I totally hear that.
Yeah, and I see that in your story. I see where everything that's happened for you, especially over the last 10 years with, like, you know, there was no social media when you were in the thick of your skyrocket, you know, but now we have social media, and there's all these channels that you're able to leverage, and the way we do business is different. And even though it's not maybe someone else's idea of what success looks like, considering where you started, I look at like what you've been able to do and how you've stayed relevant, and you've continued to have really a great career and be flexible and resilient. And I think it's fantastic. Like, you've been blessed. You've done some really cool things. And in fact, I'd love for you to share a little bit about Shine, the project that you just did and that you actually crowdfunded.
Yeah, well, I know you would never want me to do this, but I have to say I've been really inspired by being around you a lot in the last year, and I've learned a lot about really just embracing all that stuff through you. You know, I mean, you've been a real encouragement to me, and it does feel good. It's scary to embrace that vulnerability.
Yeah.
But somehow deep down you know that it's there's freedom in that, you know.
You can almost feel the power on the other side of it pulling
right.
you.
Yeah, yeah,
Scary
exactly.
Shit. It really is.
Yeah, oh, exactly. With regards to this record, I never wanted to do a crowd-funded record, a fan-funded record, but I have multiple artist friends that coaxed me. You know, they were really pushing me to do that, because they had done it and they had success with it, and you know, they were like, "Man, you've still got a great fan base out there," and you know, it's kind of the trend, and a lot of people are doing it, and it's a really great way to connect with your fans and feel like you actually. It's rewarding because you feel like you've done something with them, you know, and it's probably the most. That is vulnerable because you're. It's another window, It's letting people even closer, you know, and that's. I mean it, and I didn't know if it would be a success or not. I think that's what scared me. I was like, you know, if I get into this arena, you know, God, I don't want to fail at it, you know. Because I've already dealt with enough shame as it is with the vocal thing and all that kind of junk, and so it hit me one day, and I was just like, man, I'm gonna put a video together, and not, you know, talk about the whole sob story, but you know, kind of just open up a little bit about it, and just say, hey, this is what I want to do, and you know, would you guys support me? Let's do a project together, and just wanted to do something honest, and it ended up, you know, we did really well. We exceeded our budget goal, and I did a record of songs that inspire me, and I tried to treat them all the way they needed to be treated. I mean, as far as what I mean is I didn't try to carve them into one, one vibe or one, I didn't try to carve them into, run them all through a filter to make them sound like they were ready for this one genre or something. It was like I try to just treat each song emotionally the way it needed to be treated, and I like the way it turned out. I'm really proud of the songs, and I hope everybody that got one really enjoys it.
Yeah, it's a really great record. I listen to it all the time. We're going to put a link in the show notes so that people can go find that album on iTunes, or I don't know where all you have it listed, Bryan, but we'll find a few places and links so that people can download it. And now you do a lot of stuff. You have a lot of engagement on social media with your fans. What's that been like? It's a different world than it was 15, 20 years ago.
Well, I don't want to sound cheesy because I turn on and I hear interviews all the time by certain artists, and that my cheese meter goes up. Oh my God, that's so corny to say, but it really, I don't think about fans the same way. I just look at everything through a whole different lens now. I'm a grown up now. I'm an adult. I'm a father of two, and people matter to me. Not that they didn't before, but I just look at everything differently, and I feel closer to the people that have put me, on the map,
Right.
And I'm just so much more grateful to fans for what they've afforded me to do. And I love talking to people through Twitter and Facebook, and it's just fun. I love it. I love being able to just respond to somebody on a certain thing, or maybe they post a picture that is like this horrible picture of me that I hated and all or something. I'll just be like, oh my God, I hate that picture, but thanks for posting it. I loved it. Or they'll say something about a show that was really special to them, and I usually remember every show that I've done, and so I think it's probably neat to them that I remember it, and I'll say, oh yeah, I remember we did this particular song, or that was on tour with Vince Gill, or we were, playing the band shell at, the Minnesota State Fair or something. And I just love being able to engage with them on a much more personal level. It's fun. It's really fun.
Yeah. Yeah. And we'll link to all your social profiles in the show notes too, but you can find Bryan on Twitter at Bryan, BRYAN_White. So make sure you tweet him and tell him what you think of the interview today. He's very engaged on all of his social channels, and it's a lot of fun to watch all the feeds come through. Well, I want people to know about some of the projects that you do outside of just touring, and one of the things is producing records, and you produce several records a year in your studio. I wanted to mention, I've been in a lot of studios in Nashville. Your studio is the deadest studio I've ever been in. And
in a good way?
In a sound way. So I went down there with Erica. We had to watch something or we needed to pull something up on the computer or something, and went down there and closed the door, and she is sitting 2 or 3 feet away from me talking, and it was like I couldn't hear her the same because the studio just absorbs everything. So I felt like I had to project a little, and I was like, I've been in a ton of studios. I don't think I've ever been in a studio like this.
Well,
it's like an underground bomb shelter.
Well, it's definitely been a tornado shelter a few times,
right?
But it's fun, and we've got a kitchen down here, and if we need to come down here and bring blankets and watch the weather from down here, we can do it. So
it's multifunctional,
Okie style.
That's right, Okie style.
But it's a blessing having a place, where you can work anytime you want.
Right. Well, if you guys want to learn about some of Bryan's projects that he produces in the studio, or looking for a space to do a project, you can on Facebook look up Schmoland. Am I saying it right, Bryan?
Schmoland, yeah.
Schmoland. So there's apparently a Three Stooges story that I will never get. behind the name of the studio. But for you Three Stooges fans, you'll appreciate the name. But we'll link to all this in our show notes too, and I have to make sure you follow his Facebook page for his studio work if that's something that you're interested in. So, Bryan, thank you. Thank you for sharing your story with us today. And there's so many little gems in here. I really hope that people get a lot out of it, and I just love knowing you. Well,
it's same here. I love talking with you, and it never feels like work. That's what I love about talking with you. So this didn't even feel like an interview, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, well, I'll make sure to keep everyone in the creative entrepreneur community updated on all the cool things that are happening. We actually have my friend Esther shopping Bryan's story for a book deal, and so hopefully we'll be able to support him as he tells his story and helps us to all kind of connect with our own humanity and what this journey is like for all of us who are entrepreneurial. If it's music or any kind of business that we're growing, we have to deal with this stuff, and we're all fighting to find our voice. And I just think it's so inspiring that you found a way to be authentic about it, Bryan. And I know we all feel a lot of solidarity with you as you keep trucking along, man, doing amazing things and making great music. So.
Well, thanks. And I'll just say for anybody listening, don't be afraid to be open about how you feel and your fears and just heading straight on, head first into your scariest situation. Just do it. Go embrace your fears and conquer it. Yeah. I was going to tell you, I'm starting a tour this weekend with two of my good friends, Mark Wills and Wade Hayes.
Okay.
And so actually people can catch us out this year. It's going to be really fun. It's going to be a kind of a 90s throwback, kind of a nostalgic show. I'm really looking forward to it. They can find out about where we're going to be at bryanwhite.com too. So almost forgot to mention that to you.
Yeah. We'll put all that in the show notes too. But Bryan with a Y, Bryan, white.com. I actually have a friend that's going to check them out in Branson this weekend. So I'll have to be sure to put you on the road.
Absolutely.
Alrighty. Well, have a good one. Thanks for tuning in, everybody.
Thanks for listening to Creative Entrepreneur Radio. If you've enjoyed this episode, please leave us a review on iTunes. That helps others find our show. You can find links, contact information, and a recap of today's episode in the show notes found at creativeentrepreneurradio.com. Tweet Tell Misty. That's TELLMISTY with your thoughts, ideas, or questions, and join the conversation on our Facebook group. You can learn more about Misty and her work over at marketechu.com. See you next time.